All right, guys. So today I had a bit of an interaction with an individual on TikTok. Towards the end of the day, so random, and you know, I wanted to just break it all down. It's a slight one, not too big. So let's start with the root video. This is the video that I had posted. Then we'll go down the chain of events here. So, to be honest with you, man, I don't necessarily believe in increased investment into education opportunity, and here's why. The reality is that education increases individual opportunity. It doesn't increase community opportunity. Let's ignore the fact that there are higher dropout rates and people are just pushed through these schools in poor areas. Even if it works, one of two things will happen. They'll either leave the community for a better opportunity, or they'll stay and be intelligent but poor. We need to focus on increasing the opportunity of a particular community for the education to come. We have this idea that education increases opportunity, when the reality is that opportunity creates education. We need the money first. We need to pour money into these poor areas for them to be able to turn around and say, okay, we have a robust economic infrastructure. Now let's invest some of that money that we have into better education for our area. We focus too much on these little band-aid feel-good solutions rather than tackling the real big problem of poverty. I'm going to be right. So to sum this up, this is effectively a plug for UBI, but obviously I didn't say UBI because it was probably a reaction to somebody talking about it. My perspective on things is I'm very tired of feel-good programs. I don't think that education investment is worth our money. I think that the best case scenario is you go and you implement better education. Let's say you invest a ton of money into education in a poor area, right? We'll ignore the fact that there's higher dropout rates because kids just aren't going to school. We'll ignore the fact that some kids are just pushed through the system. We'll ignore all that. We'll pretend that it works like really well. You have kids coming out, and one of two things is going to happen. They're either going to leave their community to find a job now that they're educated, or they're going to stay and they're not going to be able to find a job. So my thing is why not, even if you're not a UBI person, the idea is why not invest raw dollars? I like UBI. Through UBI, it puts money directly into the hands of individuals. It'll pull businesses into the area. It'll give people the ability to start their own businesses and invest in themselves and their community and save money. And after all this economic infrastructure has been pushed around, after we have a nice free flow, these individuals will have additional income because more jobs are in their area. They have more opportunity, more jobs. So they can invest money into education programs. They can invest their own money into it. So it's more comprehensive. This is a bigger, comprehensive solution. I don't like these micro ideas. They're not worth the money. If everything in the United States, most issues stem from poverty. So let's deal with the poverty instead of doing feel-good things. That was the point of this video. So then this individual responded. This is what it said. I think you're a wise person, but I also think you don't realize a lot of your opinions are rooted in privilege. This is what it says right here. The privilege argument is always and always will be a dismissal of an individual's perspective without any intelligence linked to it. You're not sitting here deconstructing my argument. You're saying I'm privileged, so my argument's invalid. So let's go through his video. It's gonna be so loud, cause he just it's so loud. I don't know what he was doing. Let me lower it. Hold on.
Believe in increased investment into education opportunity, and here's why. The reality is that education increases individual opportunity. It doesn't increase community opportunity.
So a lot of people have told me to watch your videos.
Okay, let me just turn them up a little bit. So,
Papa Gut, and I agree with most of the things you say, but you got a few things wrong here. When you say that education increases
all right, so we got a few things wrong. Let's establish that. Okay.
Individual opportunity and not community opportunity, you're looking at schooling from a very privileged perspective.
So right there, I'm wrong because I'm privileged. So far.
In certain places, you are correct, where the community sees school as only a place to just educate children. Whereas in
that's all of it. School exists to educate children, and it also exists as like a daycare, honestly.
other communities, particularly low-income communities, schools function as so much more than that.
No, they don't. No, they don't. By the way, he's a school teacher from Detroit, so he thinks very highly of himself. I grew up in like a low-income area. Guidance counselors there were terrible. They solely exist to make sure that the school isn't at fault. They don't care about kids. What are you talking about? You're over exaggerating your field of work. You're being incredibly biased right now.
Some families in these communities rely on school for more than just educational benefit, but also for other wraparound services like mental health,
they don't.
food security, and so on and so on.
Food security, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Like, again, you see how well, it's good for their mental health. You know what else is good for mental health? When your single mom doesn't have to work 2 jobs to support you. And because of that, they neglect their kid. And because they neglect their kid, they lash out in anger. Guess what? You wouldn't need mental health services, and you wouldn't need to provide kids food if they had more money, like a UBI would do, pumping raw dollars. This is the problem. This is it. Feel-good programs. This is an individual who thinks very highly of himself. He thinks that he knows what he's talking about, but he's band-aiding issues. Let's spend less money on guidance counselors by providing more money to actual people to have money. Majority of mental health issues come from lack of financing. Lack of money is the number one issue why people are divorced. It's the number one issue of stress in relationships. It's the biggest issue. This is what we need to do. Right? On top of that, UBI takes people off of welfare. It gets people, weans them off of welfare. Welfare encourages single motherhood. Oh, look at that. If we get people off of welfare, more encouraged for people to live together and the father to exist, which reduces mental health issues. This is the whole thing, but there's no depth of thought here. Very shallow perspective from an individual who's very quick to weaponize privilege. Ironically, when he is in a position of privilege where he thinks that I have some... Where did you think I grew up? I grew up in an impoverished area with a single mom who worked her ass off 60 hours a week. That's the perspective I come from.
So by increasing educational investments in these schools, you actually are benefiting the community at large.
Oh, by the way, educational investments, you want to know what the number one educational investment that we need is? More money to our teachers. Every time a school gets more money, they invested in new fucking uniforms, or they invested in a new laptop or a PC, and I get we're in the technology age, and we need to invest more into technology. But, like, if you pay teachers more money, they're going to be better teachers. So, ironically, my idea is also an investment into schools. It's more comprehensive. Everything you've said is my idea is better.
Also, because I know you're someone that values looking at underlying factors, you're missing one big root of the problem here. Racism and classism are not the same thing.
No, they're not. But the way to solve racism is to solve classism. Like, here's the thing. Let's say we implemented the UBI. Okay, stereotypes exist, and there's levels of truth to them. There are particular communities, like in poor black neighborhoods, that have particular communities that centralize around gang violence and poverty. So if we remove the poverty and we add the opportunity, which are things that they didn't have in the first place, which is why we have these issues, those will go away. No? Am I wrong? No. Focusing on it as a class issue solves the race issue problem. Again, there's just not thought there. You can't sit here and say, oh, black Americans have like an nth of a percent of the accumulated wealth as white people, and then say, but money's not the solution. How? How is it not the solution? Do you listen? Do you actually think about what you're saying?
Dumping money into black and brown communities will not eliminate all other barriers that prevent black and brown people from thriving.
I'm going to be honest.
Okay, but it reduces most of them. 80%. This is what 80-20 rule. It's a rough estimate. The other barriers are going to be what? I mean, everything else is already illegal. The reality is that there's already stereotypes in these particular areas. Investing more money into these people, giving it directly into their hands, will reduce those stereotypes. It'll also reduce racism, because people right now, we have a spike in racism because people, middle-class white people mostly, are angry because they are getting siphoned and they're losing money. Take the stress off of all individuals and you will remove racism from the society. That's it. Expand people's bubbles by allowing them to stop having to focus on whether they can eat or not the next day. Anyway, my response.
Privilege arguments, very tired. And yeah, like every problem in every impoverished community is money. They really don't even need to go beyond that. Money is literally power, especially in a capitalist society. So pumping raw dollars into impoverished black communities absolutely will reverse the problem, at least 80% of it. That's where I'm coming from. UBI dump millions of dollars a month into poor black communities, allow them to invest in their own businesses and themselves and save money, and then they can decide to increase their property taxes and their funding towards their schooling. This fantasy perspective that all issues aren't rooted in poverty is very ignorant. And honestly, the whole shame tactic of, well, you're privileged, so you're probably wrong, is dismissive of reality. There's a culture in poor neighborhoods where kids aren't going to school, they're getting forced through the system, and they're just not learning. and the teachers are underpaid. UBI is an investment into schools also. Simply paying people better will make them perform better at their jobs. I'm tired of feel-good programs like educational investment that try to skirt around the real problem of poverty. Honestly.
Yeah, so I pretty much reiterated everything I just said. In a very good way. Very comprehensive, very quick, very compact way for him to acknowledge. So here's his response. By the way, he got upset, just for a little context. He got upset because my followers were saying Papa has spoken on his videos, and he took that as a form of bullying. And he was also upset that I didn't play like 15 seconds of his video. But it's like, just duet me. Just duet me, bro. Just literally hit the duet button, and then it'll link people to the video when they see it. If your argument is like, I don't like it when people come on my page and say Papa has spoken, but you can't turn around and say, well, people aren't going to look at my duets, because that's what he said later. But you're telling me that they are. So what the hell are you talking about? What are you saying? You're just not making any sense. Here's his response.
Honestly, this privilege argument's very tired. And yeah, like every problem in every impoverished community is money. They really don't even need to go beyond that. Money is literally power, especially in a capitalist society. So pumping raw dollars into impoverished black communities absolutely will reverse the problem. At least 80% of it.
Honestly, I don't like this whole
So let's just establish that I've contested each and every one of his points beautifully.
back and forth thing, but you drowned out my first video with your
Okay, I didn't drown out your first video. This is how TikTok works. I don't understand. Did you want me to speak over you or play 15 seconds? No. I want to get my message out. People can look at the root video. That's why it's there. Common sense dictates that.
response, so I feel like I need to respond again. You're saying that the privileged argument is tired and overdone. First of all, I didn't say that you shouldn't have an opinion or that you're automatically wrong because you have privilege. I said you should unpack your privilege and determine how that's potentially impacting your opinion.
Right, so, first of all, establish this. Him saying, hey, I come from a perspective of privilege, which, by the way, I don't, is basically just his way of dismissing my argument, because he would rather dismiss my argument than actually listen to it and contest it. This whole privilege thing is pathetic. It's just an excuse for you to not listen to me, and it's an excuse. It's for you attempting to shame me into submission, but it's not going to work. Like, I know that you're like you're a school teacher and you think very highly of yourself, but right now we've already established that I have the ability to sit down and lay out my perspective much better than you, because you're used to just shame tactics. I'm used to having conversations with people.
And I'm clearly right that you should be doing that more often if your entire argument is based on money, money, money.
Again, like, you're like, yeah, bro, not for nothing, but if you don't think that money is the central issue in the entire world, especially in a capitalist society, you are speaking from a position of privilege. How do you not understand that? Where was your struggle in life? Most struggles come from lack of finances. Again, we've made it through half this video, hasn't mentioned a point of mine once other than, you're wrong, bro, because you're privileged. That's all he says. Presumptuous stuff. Very ignorant, very presumptuous.
That's literally the definition of privilege, to believe that money will solve all
It will solve most
or
of them.
80% of them, as you claim.
Yeah, it's the 80-20 rule. It's like a pretty common thing.
I'm so confident when you talk about the reality of schools and
Still
poor
not doing
communities. But I'm actually curious as to how much of your opinion is rooted in real experiences
Again,
or just what you've read.
Nothing.
Race and class are connected, but they're not the same thing. Dumping money into poor communities may help poor white people, but it won't end all racism.
So again, we've established he made the same video twice, except this time he focused more on shaming me for me not agreeing with him. He didn't make a single point other than I'm privileged and I don't know what I'm talking about. But he won't acknowledge the fundamentals that money solves problems. That's it. People are racist because of stereotypes that were perpetuated by governmental failure denying opportunities to black Americans. Remove that, solve that, and there won't be these issues anymore. The stereotypes will disappear. Oh, it's very simple. People, intellectual people, they have like this really major focus on this idea that like overthinking problems and overthinking solutions is better. But this individual is absolute evidence that we have a problem in society where intellectuals, formally educated people, think that they're smarter than non-formally educated people. Because this individual is formally educated, he doesn't even feel like he has to explain his perspective. He feels like he can say whatever he wants, unregulated, and that I'm automatically wrong. It's lazy, pathetic, it's demeaning, and like, honestly, it's not helpful in any capacity. I'm sorry that I don't have a formal degree. I'm not a teacher in Detroit, but from what we've seen, this uneducated individual blue-collar worker has the capacity of thought to contest when and stand up for what he's saying. You haven't made a single point other than I'm a teacher and schools do lots of stuff. They're so beneficial. Schools are for learning. Their schools are for learning, teaching middle class kids to be workers instead of thinking about what they need to do, and a fucking daycare center. Nobody cares about mental health in schools whatsoever in any capacity, because if we did, guidance counselors wouldn't be brushing off major issues, and we'd give kids mental health days when they're in school. But we don't do that. That's the reality of the situation.
Honestly, this privilege.
Let's get to my video.
Triggered Intellectual Central. This whole idea that intelligence is directly linked to money in this capacity is ridiculous. I get it. If you are smarter, you have a better chance at making money. But if there's no economic infrastructure in your area, you're not going to be able to get a job that utilizes your intelligence. So until we take money and we invest it into these communities and we redistribute wealth in a more positive way, doesn't matter how fucking smart you are. I'm really sorry that you get triggered by people saying Papa has spoken in your comments, by the way. And I'm also sorry that you don't understand how TikTok back and forths work. I'm not playing 15 seconds of your audio when they could just click the video and go right to yours. So what school did you go to where mental health was a big concern? Schools don't give a shit about your mental health. I'm assuming it's your privilege of going to a good school that actually did that. But hey, where do all these mental health problems come from? Well, maybe abuse and neglect due to financial hardships because not having money is incredibly stressful and causes you to have to work more. Everything's linked to money. Your lack of understanding is a privilege that you possess. I'm using your trigger words against you. You're not as woke as you think you are. You're an intellectual who doesn't value blue-collar workers. Here we go, guys. Triggered Intellectual Central.
That was it. That was it. That's the whole thing. So basically, to sum this up, I made a point about investing money instead of feel-good programs. He got upset, said that I was wrong because he's smarter than me, told me that I was privileged and didn't even bother to defend his perspective because he's a lazy individual who thinks that because he's an intellectual that he doesn't have to sit down and explain things to me. It was belittling and demeaning. The problem is that it doesn't work with me. It doesn't. Honestly, you know, you just lashed out the whole time. It was kind of pathetic, honestly, bud. Like, really. And I know you're going to fire back tomorrow on your video. I'm just going to link it to this one. You can all watch this. Because, like, honestly, dude, it's not working, man. It's not working. You look foolish. The worst part is I'm just some fucking fat blue-collar guy that just completely washed over your whole perspective. You made no valid points in any capacity. You focused on trying to deconstruct my validity as an individual rather than my arguments. So, good job on that, my mans. You did a great job. So, yeah, man. That's that one.